but I think that most of the tips go for kind of anything that you're up to. So first of all, I need to find the right screen. There we go. One more second. There we go. Perfect. I'm Aaron. I have been freelancing for, I don't know, 13, 12 years, something like that. Almost as long as I've been a software developer. So I started fairly early doing freelancing. I've given a lot of talks at different conferences and meetups. I give workshops. I have an Elixir one coming up in, I think, October, and I'm looking forward to working on that and getting it going. I'm going to be streaming on Twitch a bit as I'm trying to figure it out using Livebook and stuff. So if you're interested in Elixir, maybe follow me on Twitter if you feel like it. I'm mostly just retweeting these DALL-E images that are amazing right now. So yeah. So I'll just jump into a little bit about my history. It all started years and years ago. I was a cook. I worked at kind of Italian bistros where we knew the chefs and we knew the farmers. We had whole animals in the walk-in. We made everything by hand, the pasta. And this is actually a dish at the last restaurant that I worked at in Seattle, where it's some kind of a duck confit with poached egg on it. I actually never cooked this. This was after me. I was looking for images of food from the restaurant on the internet. And yeah, and the rest of the pictures I found were not quite as great as that first one. It turns out that it's hard to take pictures of food when you are at a restaurant. This is, I think, the best. I don't know what that is. I think it has something to do with egg. That's as far as I'm going to go with it. So anyway, I wanted to get better at cooking, so I moved to Italy to cook in some like restaurants on the countryside. This was like fairly near the beginning of the slow food movement, so it was kind of like get down to the roots. I was supposed to work at restaurants, but it didn't end up working out, so I volunteered on farms instead. And I met my wife on one of those farms, and she is from Austria, so I ended up in Austria. So I live in the suburbs of Vienna, and I've been here for a long time, on and off, mostly on since 2006. So yeah, so I got here and I was like, oh, cooking, great. It turns out that it's hard to find good cooking work when you don't have any kind of understanding of the language of the place you are, or you have zero network. We'll get to networks a bit later, but yeah, so I only found crappy catering work, and where the people, I think, enjoyed the food as much as I liked making it. And so I was like, what else? I want to change careers. What should I do? What do I know about? And it turns out that I knew a little bit about computers. I had been making websites for some time just on the side. I made like a website for a farm that I worked at and just random stuff. And I was like, hey, I'm just going to throw some emails out there and try and get some work. Say, hey, I want to work with a team. I've never worked with a team. I've only done this. Here are the things that I've done. You can pay me nothing or a little bit of money. And it turned out that I ended up getting a job making Flash banner ads. And that was the heyday of the internet, when Flash banner ads were everywhere. And I was very proud of my Flash banner ads. We worked for LG Austria, and I made very similar Flash banner ads to these, mostly with phones when the new phones came out. It was very exciting. I worked on my animation tweens and got the timing right. And I was very, very proud of the way the phones and the people's hands and things and the images came in. It was really fantastic work. And everybody loves Flash banner ads. So I was very happy that I made people happy as well. I also worked with a wonderful CMS. I don't know if you're familiar with it. It's mostly big in the German-speaking world, called Typo 3. And it is a giant steaming pile of shit. And here is what the interface looked like. And it had its own language that you could use to create menus dynamically, where you used strange case statements and hierarchies of insanity to kind of build out these dynamic menus. It was, I still kind of get shivers when I think about this technology. Like, the people that made it should feel, they should feel really bad. So when I was working on these, I was doing a lot of PHP stuff. I started playing with Codeigniter and what was the other one? Kohana. And it turns out that these things were very, very much inspired by Rails. And they felt good. Like it felt wonderful to use them. It felt like people that wrote them actually used them. So I jumped into the Ruby world, and it was probably, in the beginning was, of course, the blog in 15 minutes that was famous from years and years ago. I remember looking at the code and thinking how strange the Ruby code looked, and what are they doing? What is death? But then, like, of course, you get used to that stuff. But yeah, so I started doing Ruby stuff, and then I decided, hey, I don't want to be doing this PHP and this Flash banner ad stuff anymore. I want to start working on code that I enjoy working on. So I started freelancing. Yeah, so that's kind of where it was 11, 12 years ago, and how it's been since then. So just kind of quickly, everyone kind of has a different idea of what freelancing is. I have my opinion. Everyone else is different. So first of all, I think that it's when you're a business entity, so you have some kind of a working permit or a business permission. You generally are working directly with your clients, not through some kind of subsidiary or some global corporate kind of situation. You're getting paid directly from your clients, and you can have from one to many clients. So I've talked a lot with people that have agencies, or there's a lot of new models now where it's kind of like you are a group of freelancers and you are a single entity, and that gives you some trust. I actually kind of don't really care. I think that you can generally get the idea. I call myself a freelancer, so this is kind of my general rule of thumb of what I think a freelancer is. And there's a few issues. Everything has its trade-offs, and freelancing definitely is one of those things. So this is comparing to like having an employed job where you go to 40 hours a week, whatever. You need to do your own sales and marketing. So generally when you have a job, you're not having to do any sales. You're not having to do any marketing. You're generally doing coding. You are dealing with your own finances, taxes. Yeah, it can be pretty painful at times, especially if it's not something you like. I'm very, very bad at this. I finally become an adult in the last couple of years and actually do a lot of my stuff on time. Like, that's how terrible I am with it. You have less job security. When you have an employed job, you are employed and you get your paycheck and you don't have to worry about losing your job. There's definitely an asterisk there, a star. I believe actually the opposite of this, that when you're freelancing, not only are you can have multiple clients at the same time. So if one goes away, if there's a recession, you generally have more of a pool to pick from. But I think you also, when you're constantly looking for work and communicating with people, that you're gaining skills that, say you have a job for 3 years or 5 years or 10 years, you kind of lose those getting a new job skills. And when I'm having 5 new clients a year, 6 new clients, 3 new clients a year, I'm constantly in this kind of, my skills of finding new work are staying honed and strong. Possibly if you're having more of an agency model, or you just need some help, sometimes you're having to deal with the overhead of managing subcontractors. So management, finances, and the like. And you're having to think more about networking. So something that's really feeds into my business a lot is my network, which requires a lot of extra work where normally you're writing code. And there's this whole other part that took me years to learn, that one huge part of my job is managing client expectations. So making sure that I'm communicating to the people that I'm working for that there's progress when there's progress, showing them things, sometimes not doing something that's super important to do something that's more visible. So they feel like there's progress. Sometimes you can get stuck in the back end for a long time, making things more efficient, but your client, especially when you're working remotely, doesn't see any progress. They might see tickets, but a lot of it is really just trying to be like, hey, this can just be communication as well. Just making sure that you have a channel open where you're like, hey, this is what I'm working on. This is when it should be done. And this takes time and effort. But there are a lot of good things that come along with some of these trade-offs. You don't have a boss kind of telling you what to do all the time. Sometimes your clients can be pretty micromanagey, but when you work, how you work, how much effort you put into getting new work, about promoting yourself, all of these things you can see directly in the outcome of, you see it, I think, clearer. So if my revenue goes up, generally, I think that I'm doing certain things right and I'm being successful with those things. But I mean, there's not just revenue, there's also connections with people. There's, I mean, just pure profit. There's building, like helping other people. There's a lot of things that you can kind of judge what your success or failure on. You as a byproduct of running a business, you learn business skills. So marketing, sales, how to create and kind of feed a network, dealing with taxes, how the tax system works in the country that you're in, and managing clients, managing yourself, managing subcontractors. All of these things become very important. And the thing that I like the most about it is there's generally some kind of a ceiling on most kinds of developer jobs. But when you're freelancing, you have the ability to create maybe products or side services, or write a book, or specialize into something. And really, like, it's fairly unendless what is possible depending on the effort and the knowledge that you have, to the amount of money that you can earn through doing it. And so now I want to split up kind of the good, the bad, and the ugly of freelancing from my point of view. So one of the great things, I kind of mentioned this lightly earlier, is that you get to be your own boss. So you call the shots, you decide when and where you work, how you work, if you work remotely, and how you do project management, which tools you use. Sometimes that's dictated by the client, but a lot of the times you have control, depending on what kind of clients you have. A lot of my clients have done one or zero software projects before, so I can really dictate the things that work best with me and how I think will work best with them. You have the ability to expense things. So, like, for example, my car and all of the stuff that I'm looking at in my office is microphone, the monitor that I'm looking at, my computers, my backpack, all of these things. I can reduce my tax burden by claiming them on my taxes. I like this. And you have independence. Like I said a minute ago, you can work kind of wherever you want, whenever you want. If you want to be a digital nomad and work on some beach somewhere, like if you can get there, you can get your visa, then you can work it out. If you want to work from a cabin and you don't need internet, or you can find it, you can work from there. Like, a lot of these things have changed slightly because we become more remote because of the pandemic. But I mean, as people start to go back to the office, I think that this kind of independence will, it's a good thing. So there's some kind of things I don't like so much. You're going to need to be visible, and you're going to need to convince people that you are the right person for whatever job. Like, you're experienced enough, you're going to give it to them like quickly, or it's going to never break or not break very often. Like, you need to have sales skills, but you also need marketing skills. You need to be able to find out how to create trust that you're the right person, that you that they think of you first, that you're visible, you're front of mind for your clients, that you are in communication. And these things take up a lot of time and headspace. As I said a minute ago, I'm terrible at this. I have an accountant, but still I'm terrible at it. I recommend getting an accountant. It costs some amount of money per year, but the amount of just like the crappy paperwork that you don't have to do is completely worth it. And then we go to the really not so fun stuff. So as I said earlier, be your own boss. When I first started freelancing, I got lucky and I got lots of projects at once. So I think that in my first year, there was a point where I had 6 projects at the same time. And what that turned into for me wasn't a be your own boss. It was have 6 bosses. So picking the wrong types of clients, which I think that there's a learning curve to that. In the beginning, you will probably have some bad clients. You'll probably be cheaper, and generally when things cost less, the clients that you end up getting are more demanding and more micromanaging. And so it was a nightmare. A lot of people say it's a good problem to have too much work, but it's like almost breakdown style, like stress. And yeah, it made me really not enjoy my life and freelancing. So be careful. There's also this common thing called the feast and famine cycle, where there's periods of time like what I was just describing, where you'll have lots of projects or lots of people coming in interested, and you don't actually have the supply for their demand. But then there's also this famine part, where generally what ends up happening is you're talking to people, you're out there, you're marketing, you're friendly, and then you end up getting work, and then you get stuck in the work and you're working, I don't know, 40, 50, 60 hours, however much is your maximum that you want to do. And then more work starts coming in and you have to turn it down, or you end up with too many projects. And then you're so stressed out and so busy from working that you don't do marketing anymore, and you disappear and people forget about you. And then all of a sudden you run out of work, your contract finishes, your last one finishes, and you realize that you don't have any more work, or you have just 10 hours a week or whatever. And this is very, very common. And it's happened to me multiple times. And I always look back and I see that the points where I have my famine phases are generally a couple months after I stopped marketing. So it's really important to keep up with your marketing. But this is also a very demotivating thing that can happen. And also you're running a business. Like, you're not just a coder anymore. You are responsible for payroll and dealing with banks and all of the stuff I mentioned before with marketing and sales and communication and project management, all of the things. So yeah, generally you come in and you're like, I want to be a freelancer. I want to code. So you come in and then you realize, oh, never mind. There's a lot of other stuff going on. You have sales, marketing, networking, follow-up should take a significant amount of your time because it's a great way to get more work. You have partnerships to maintain with possible other freelancers or companies. And dealing with taxes is fun. And there's also this kind of strategic planning where it's good to think ahead, maybe this quarter or I don't know, this year, and have some sort of an idea, maybe not put everything in stone, but definitely have a kind of an idea of where you're going, have goals. And that takes up time. All of these things take up it could be 20% of your time. It could be 50% of your time, depending on how the trade-off works with these things, which isn't coding. And as far as subcontractors go, I'm far from being an expert on it. Yeah, if you want to know more about subcontracting, I have a podcast that is for software developers who are freelancing, helping them get more clients, better clients. And yeah, you can check it out. I'll have another QR code at the end if you're interested. Yeah, it's fun. I need to put out more episodes though. So the next thing I want to talk about is how to scale your freelance business. So I think about this in a way of kind of like computer systems, where you have this idea of horizontal scaling and you have this idea of vertical scaling. So horizontal scaling with computer system is I have a lot of computing power that I need all of a sudden. So what I'm going to do is split it off into as many machines as possible. And maybe they'll be low quality machines, but I'll have a lot of them. And then I'll load balance between them somehow. And then I will get the computing power I need for what's going on. Then there's this idea of vertical scaling, where instead of more computers, you have less computers that are more powerful. So just better CPUs, more RAM, more hard drive space, whatever. And I feel like this is a good metaphor for kind of these two ideas of growing your freelance business, where you either go with a growth mindset or you can go with a kind of a specialization mindset. Whereas growth is, in my mind, hiring more people. So subcontractors, maybe a project manager, or someone who does some of your onboarding stuff. Like more people is growth. I have never gone this direction just because of the overhead of management, where I'm more interested in kind of marketing and coding and thinking of products than I am in thinking of managing people. Maybe this will change. It's just where I'm at and where I've been. And so I stay away from this type of specialization, or this type of scaling. And I focus more kind of on this specialization, where I also split up into kind of two categories of either you specialize in a platform or technology, or you try to focus on customer problems and solutions, and then find a way to sell to clients based on that. So as far as kind of specializing in a platform or technology, you would choose some kind of a technology stack, or some sort of a product like Shopify. Maybe you only do Shopify related application, Shopify apps, or maybe Stripe checkout. You're really, really good at that, or dealing with Stripe webhooks, or a technology stack like Rails, or maybe Sidekick. You're the best in the business at Sidekick, or yeah, I don't know what else people are using right now. Maybe Redis. So you get really, really good at this. And then you try to become the go-to person for this technology or stack. Like there's a guy in Vienna who is very, very known for doing SEO. And if you just ask people around the tech community, they will recommend SEO Franz. Like it's become his nickname. You know where to go for SEO, and you kind of want to become the SEO Franz of Postgres performance, or of Rails caching, web performance. So another way to specialize is with customer value. So this is not very easy. This is one reason why it's done less often, especially if you're a generalist. So I'm a generalist. Like I've done lots of stacks, like from from the Ruby, PHP, Python I did for a couple of years, not that long ago, some Go, different databases. Like it's been spread out, and it's hard to think of kind of like, what is one thing one stack that I can kind of narrow down, not one stack, sorry, one kind of customer group or one kind of problem that I've solved. And so what I've done in the past is create a list of all of my projects that I've worked on, and then tried to kind of think about the expensive problems, the important problems that I've solved, and then try to kind of narrow down what things are the most interesting to me, like maybe customers that are really analytics focused, that are in the music business. And then talk to those people, talk to people you don't know, talk to people on LinkedIn, on Twitter, call businesses, send them emails, and then kind of ask them about what their problems are. And people like to be asked about what their problems are a lot of the time. So you get answers. And then keep iterating on those, like try stuff out. Yeah. And then there was one, these are of course just anecdotes, but there was one client or one freelancer contractor that I heard about, who got so narrow in his focus and specialization of the type of client that he worked with, that there were only, I think, 100 of them in the world, and they were making just an ungodly amount of money for the thing that they were solving. And then what that helps you also do is, when you're specializing like that, you can focus a lot of your energy into making your skill set better and being able to solve the right problems better, instead of looking for work all the time, because you have already your narrow group that you're focusing on. So you just become better and better at that thing that you're good at doing. So specifically with Ruby, I want to get into kind of things that I've done when I was doing more Ruby, and just kind of generally some good things to do for freelancing. So be visible. This is the thing, like anytime that I look back at times that I was having the famine part of the feast and famine cycle, the thing that I noticed the most is that maybe a month, 2 months before that, were always times where I was at home and not communicating with other people. So I wasn't going out to meetups. I wasn't going to conferences. I wasn't interacting with other people. I was like just either working, hanging out with my family, doing whatever, but not out there with the world. And any time that I have had enough or too much work has always been those times where I was out in front of people more often. So be visible, go to conferences, go to meetups, ask questions on whatever forums you're using, Twitter, Facebook groups. What is Trump's thing? Freedom Land. If you're on there, and then share what you learn. If you're learning new things about whatever the technology that you're using, or about the type of clients that you're working with, share that stuff. Whatever platform you feel the most comfortable with. Yeah, but be visible. It's really a great way to find clients. And you might be wondering where to look for work. I have used, I think, all of these things, except for talking to bosses at old jobs. It's advice that I've heard that I've never taken, because I've only have one old boss, but I have constantly talked with clients that I've had earlier. So I found there was a particularly my first famine cycle, actually, I realized that I'd never actually looked for work before. And I found work on freelancer.com at the time, which is an absolute terrible website that you should stay away from. But the way that I was able to get a pretty good paying contract from that website was to very much specialize. So if you normally what you want to do when you go to a freelance website is to tick all of the boxes for all of the things that you know. Like, it's great, I know Redis and Postgres and MongoDB and Sidekick and Rails and the Sinatra and the one Hanami and all of the things. And what ends up happening is that you just, it's so much noise and so much crap, and you're competing with people that are also generalists. And what I found to do is that it worked the best for me if I pick some obscure technology that I know, or maybe two of them. I think that on freelancer.com, I had Erlang for a while because there was no Elixir, which I didn't even know Erlang. I could read it, or Golang, and try to find contracts that way, and just have one thing or two things in your profile, less noise, and generally the things that you hear about, if they're less common, are higher paid and better experience types of things. So that worked for me back in the day. Now it's like 100% through my network and through being visible. Remote OK is a great place to look for kind of what you should learn, because there's a lot of different kind of cool jobs on it where you can be like, a lot of the questions that you'll have when you first start freelancing is like, kind of what skills should I have? Especially when you're a junior developer, you're fairly new to software development. And one way I think to find out which skills you should learn are to go to a site like Remote OK, find job titles that sound interesting to you, and then look at what their requirements are and try to learn all of them, or 70% of them, or some kind of amount. It's a good kind of a curriculum for you to start getting ready to have those skills. And friends and family is a way that is recommended a lot of the time. Yeah, it of course depends on what connections your friends and family have. And the most important thing, the thing that I feel is a cheat code, is having a strong network of people. So that's just people that you are in regular communication with. And this is people that you meet at events, friends, other software developers, former clients, former bosses, everyone that you meet, like, to try and find a way to keep in communication with people. And yeah, and a lot of the best way to keep in communication with people is to actually be interested in what they're doing, and then asking them. And yeah, it's great. And I feel like it would be, if the question is like, that I ask a lot of people on the podcast is like, if you had to start over again, like, what would you tell yourself now? And for me, like, it would definitely be have a network. And I feel like if I started over again with a new technology, with whatever, like, I still, my network is so important. And the second most important thing that the second best piece of advice that I would give is follow up, like, really give yourself reminders, and keep trying to make sure that you're constantly in touch with people. Like, you need to be in front of mind, or people will forget about you. And it's how it is. No matter how amazing you are at what you do, if you're not in front of people, they won't know what you're up to, and they will forget about you. Yeah, and when you start meeting people as soon as possible. Like, if you need to do that in forums or on Facebook groups, or do online meetups. I don't know what it's like in Kiev right now for people meeting each other, but if you can't, like, online events work great for some people. Yeah, and keep your connections alive. There's certain tools. I'll talk about a tool later that I think is great for this, but there's also some really simple things that you can do. And yeah, so yeah, if you want to try and find out what you should know, I've already said this, like, go to Remote OK, go to LinkedIn, go to any job board that you know, and look what the requirements are for jobs that look really cool to you. Like, find a job that you're like, whoa, like, I would love to do this every day, and then see what they need. And also, you should read books on running a business if you want to do freelancing. There's some pretty cool books that have come out in the last years about software development freelancing, about kind of how to do marketing as a software developer. If people are interested, send me a message on Twitter and I can give you some good book recommendations. I've read a lot of them. I like them a lot. There's some pretty good books on networking that kind of, some of them kind of contradict each other, but they're nice to read, kind of just to get kind of an intro. Some good books on entrepreneurship. I'll talk about one in a minute, and marketing. Yeah, all of these things like are great to know. And just general, it's great to learn about things that are not normally in the realm of the things that you know. So with this kind of specialization, it's good to pick a niche, or niche, as some people say. And I've kind of gone over this before about kind of tricks to do this. You make a list. You can list all of the projects that you've worked on, the industry, kind of the solutions that you've made, what actually brought value to your client. You can narrow it down to just, I don't know, 2 things, 1 thing, 3 things, and get as specific as possible. A lot of people are afraid that if they're getting too specific with the type of problem they solve, or the type of clients, or the tech stack or whatever, that they'll lose clients. But what ends up happening is the more that you narrow down your focus, the easier it is for people to know that you're the right person to solve that problem. If you're like, I'm a software developer, which I organize a freelancing meetup group in Vienna, and a lot of people say, like, when we're like, okay, let's introduce ourselves, a lot of people say, like, it's like, what do you do? And they're like, I'm a software developer. And I mean, normally people don't go to their friend asking if they know anyone who develops software. They want to know someone who builds iPhone apps, or that knows how to scale a large application, or knows how to get better SEO, like tips for that, and or like build a music streaming application. So the more specific you can get, it narrows down. Of course, you're leaving stuff on the table, you're leaving possible clients on the table, but you also are really communicating to people, this is what I do, and I'm the right person for you. And also, don't be afraid with what you pick, because you're going to have to put some effort into marketing it and selling it and becoming that person. But if you end up not liking it or want to change it a bit, you can. It's not a problem. It's like, for example, this is my website right now, and I need to update it. It's been a long time, and it still says, one of the specializations I was trying out for a bit was helping companies kind of hire developers. So kind of like, what would you call it? Like brand marketing, and kind of helping them with onboarding and things like that. I don't do that. I've never been paid to do that before. So, and it doesn't matter. Like, I still am getting good contracts, and I just need to delete that line from my website, essentially, to change what it is that I do. So some general tips. There are, one thing that I like to try to do is to find as many channels to get to me as possible. So for example, I don't often talk to recruiters, but I do have an open communication with a few of them that seem like reasonable people who care about me and not just want to get more kind of commission in my feeling. I have, like, I'm doing follow-up. I'm communicate sometimes with people on Twitter. I have my podcast. I have a lot of different ways for people to find me. And yeah, I think it's good to find as many as possible, but only as many as you can manage, because sometimes there's a lot of noise in one channel and not very much payoff. So it's good to also kind of trim things. But for example, I probably spent 20 hours maybe in my life communicating, having lunches with recruiters. And I just picked up a contract that will probably last a year, with a really, really good rate, and like 30 to 40 hours a week. And it was from a recruiter. So it way more than paid off for the amount of time that I've been in communication with them. But the moment anyone sounds sketchy, like, they're deleted. So keep the noise away. I think this is a great book to read. I waited way too long to read it. It goes into kind of this, so I thought I would code idea, where most people that start a business are technicians. He goes in the book with the example of someone who starts like I think it's a blueberry pie company or something like that. And she was really into making pies. She loved making pies, the science of it, the art of it. But it takes more to run a business than to make pies. You need to kind of create, you need to manage, you need to have a company vision, and these things. And he has this huge like analogy that he uses throughout the book, but it really spoke to me a lot. And I think that it would be very good to use a software developer as the example, because really, like, we're technicians, we come in, we're great at this skill. But it turns out there's a lot of other stuff that we need to be good at. We need to consider our freelancing situation to be a business and not just to be a coder for hire. And then you will be happier, you'll get better clients, and your revenue, your profits will go up as well. So just something else that took me quite a few years to start doing was to get separate bank accounts. They can be at the same bank. They can be at separate banks. There's a book that I read about taking a certain amount of a percentage of your revenue out as profit, and then kind of essentially hiding it in another bank account in another bank that's hard to get to. He talks about how you should get one that has an absolutely horrible e-banking situation, so you're not tempted to go in and transfer the money. Luckily, I have enough, I guess, skills to not have that problem, and I think I have like 6 or 7 bank accounts at my current bank, and I kind of move money around between them. But really, at the very least, even if they're 2 personal accounts, keep your business money in one and your personal money in the other. It's much easier to do taxes. It's much easier to deal with accounting, all of those things. And also to like kind of pay yourself. It's great. Highly recommended. And as I said before, be in front of people, be visible as much as possible. It's incredible how much it pays off. If you don't like, if you can't, or if you're more, you like to be by yourself, you're not great with other people directly in person, like, there's lots of other ways. Ask questions, answer questions on Reddit, work on open source projects that are very visible, just ways that you're constantly kind of in communication with other people, or that they can see the work that you're doing, so you stay in the front of their mind. And I use a CRM. A CRM is an application that pretty much the only thing that I use it for is to store contacts that I've met, like people, clients, and then create reminders that I need to communicate with them again. So say in a month, send them an email, or in 6 months, ask them about what's going on with their project. And then every time that I do the thing, I check it off, and then it asks me, what are you going to do with them next? And say I have a bad experience doing that, or it's I feel like it's too often that I'm communicating with them, you can just put a longer date on it. Say contact them in a year instead of in 3 weeks. Yeah, and I think that they're great tools. What I use Pipedrive, which costs like, I think, 14 euros a month, which is fairly reasonable. But also, like, you can get pretty far if you're using Gmail with just snoozing emails. You can just say, okay, snooze this email for 3 months, and then it'll pop up in the top of your feed later. And always be marketing. Even when you have too much business, still be going to events. And if you have the problem where you have too much stuff coming in and you're freaking out, this is a fear that I had for a long time. It's good to have a community where you can say, oh, I actually know a Rails developer, I know a Sinatra developer, here, let's contact them. And then everyone wins. Like, you help someone, you help 2 people actually, and you also make sure that this person gets, this possible client gets the best possible connection they could, instead of letting them free into the world again to try and find someone who they could end up with a nightmare situation. Yeah, so everyone's happy in the end. It feels good. Yeah, so contact people, be out there, be marketing. Yeah, and that's it. This is a QR code that goes to the podcast page if you're interested in learning more. I just do interviews with people that I know. I've only gotten as far as people that I know so far. I have a bunch of episodes on deck that have been edited that I just need to add an intro and an outro to. So I need some, if you're interested in the podcast, let me know on Twitter. And it's good feedback so that I put some gas behind it and release more episodes, because I really like doing it. I think it's super helpful. I get good feedback from it. Like, it's just interviews with people where we talk about kind of how they get better clients, and they're all in the software development world. Cool. And that's everything. So thanks for your time.